Welcome to Blood Binge, where we satisfy your thirst for all things horror. My name is Sloan, and today we're looking at the enigmatic sequel, A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge, to figure out exactly where each character falls on the moral spectrum of good to evil. A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge, has become somewhat of a cult classic since its 1985 release. While not remembered as the scariest slasher sequel or the best showcase of Krueger's cruelty, Freddy's Revenge is an important continuation of the story. The plot follows high school student Jesse as he adjusts to life in his family's new home on Elm Street. He's got a spot on the baseball team, a cute girl to carpool with, and, of course, a demon that needs to use his body as a gateway into the physical realm to continue his killing spree.
There is no Jesse! I'm Jesse now!
If you have questions about how the last part works, you're definitely not alone. But you may be in the wrong place. We're not here to judge the plot after all, just the characters. Today, we'll be ranking the cast of A Nightmare on Elm Street 2 from good to evil. So let's get to the rules. First up, we'll be breaking down characters into 3 categories: the good, the gray area, and the bad to evil, starting with the most noble and ending with the most evil. Afterwards, we'll check the full leaderboard to see who the biggest saints and sinners are, as well as reveal our in-depth ranking of the killer's evil level. Our depraved formula will rank our killers on a scale of 1 to 100 to see how they stack up against other horror movie killers. And finally, we will only be focusing on the events featured in Freddy's Revenge, as well as in the original A Nightmare on Elm Street. Anything happening in the subsequent films is a topic for future videos, assuming we survive long enough to get there. So with that said, let's get right on down to Dreamland and get screaming. As usual, we're going to start with the most noble character and work our way down. What would a horror movie be without the people who fight against the powers of evil? These characters are the good. The gold medal of good goes to Lisa. She's a caring and devoted girlfriend even before she's technically a girlfriend. She denies that there's anything going on between her and the new kid Jesse, but she's willing to hop out of the pool to come help him clean his room. She throws parties for her friends, doesn't engage in the school's gossip problem, is an attentive daughter, and generally seems to be a good person. A theme that you may remember from our last video covering Elm Street is that we docked a lot of points for not believing in the troubled protagonist. Spoiler alert, we're gonna have to bring that theme back for this video as well. Lisa gets a ton of credit for doing the exact opposite of that. If anything, she's too quick to believe Jesse, but it allows her to be a glowing example of what a supportive girlfriend should look like. Jesse tells her that he's having nightmares about Krueger, dreams of killing people, and Lisa never discounts that or tells him he's crazy. In fact, she pitches ideas for what might be happening, equates it to credible examples of similar experiences, and does as much research as she can to try and help him through it. Okay, the fact that she's able to maintain that level of good-natured helpfulness in life or death situations is pretty impressive. If she loses credit for anything, it's the fact that she turned Jesse's stress into a makeout session during her party. But to her credit, she does say just before that she'll do whatever it takes to make him feel better, even if she has to stay up all night to make it happen.
Not gonna let anything happen to you.
Unlike when other characters have been coerced into saying they'll pull an all-nighter, she volunteers for the task, and we believe she would have done it if she had to. All in all, she's a good person with good intentions who goes above and beyond for the person she cares about. She has faith in Jesse even when he doesn't have faith in himself. We can think of no one more deserving to top out our list. The silver medal of good goes to her friend, Carrie. Carrie's a supportive friend who, despite her generally one-track mind, cares about Lisa, her relationship, and is able to give good advice more than once. Yes, she's a little sex-crazed, and yeah, she's a little immature, but she's there for her friend when needed and gets credit for her moral support. The bronze medal of good goes to Mrs. Walsh, Jesse's mother. She doesn't do anything extraordinarily good, but she also expresses a deep level of concern for her son and what he's going through. She worries about his health while he's experiencing the nightmares. She often defends him from other family members who blame him for his condition, including the unintentionally creepy sister.
He's just having a bad dream.
When he's brought home naked by police in the middle of the night, it's obvious her first concern is making sure he's okay rather than trying to punish him. She advocates for Jesse getting professional help. When other parents have done this in the franchise, it's been seen as more of a threat, but she seems to genuinely want her son to get better. Mrs. Walsh does make some unfortunate decisions. For example, she never actually gets her son that help and lets his father do whatever he wants around the house, even when things start getting really weird. But overall, she tries. She cares for her family and doesn't do anything horrendous, which is where our bar is at. Okay, and before we wrap up our good section, we'd like to mention Nancy Thompson. The winner of our gold medal of good from the previous Elm Street video here, Nancy Thompson deserves the equivalent of an honorable mention on this list as well. Although we don't see her on screen at all, her presence is very much felt in this film. Her diary helps guide Lisa and Jesse to victory in their first fight against Krueger.
He needed our screams.
And even in writing only, she comes across as a sympathetic character. With that said, our good section comes to a close. These next characters fall in the neutral territory of our morality spectrum. This is the gray area. Our first pick is Angela Walsh, Jesse's sister. She's just our typical sweet little blonde girl who likes to play with creepy finger toys, accuse her brother of things, and be generally unfazed when her pet birds explode. You know, normal things. It may be the writing or acting, but something about Angela just seems very unnatural and a little unsettling.
Shh, the birds are sleeping.
Her only real crimes are general brattiness and a lack of empathy, but it's more than enough to strike concern on a close enough viewing. Following her, we have Grady. He's a weird character to get a read for. He's kind of a jerk who likes to cause trouble. He starts fights, pantses people, and puts a snake on Jesse while he's sleeping in class, getting him in a ton of trouble. And these are all actions he takes towards someone he considers to be his friend. The strange thing is, we don't think Grady does these things maliciously. He just thinks they're funny jokes. And he also seems to be a decent friend, taking Jesse in when he shows up at his house in the middle of the night. Of course, he loses points in that scene just before his death by promising Jesse that he'll stay awake right before going to bed. Why? Why will they never learn? And our last pick here, we have Lisa's parents. We're ranking them together because we only ever see them as a unit. Neither stands above the other in terms of being very good or very evil. We do think that they mean well. Lisa's mother seems invested and likable. Her father is embarrassing, but also wants his daughter to have a good time and is shown expressing caution regarding the activities of the high schoolers at his house, wanting them to stay out of trouble. As to why they rank so low in the gray section, despite their concern about the children staying out of trouble, they don't really do a whole lot to help once the kids find trouble. To be fair, no one really teaches parents how to react to their daughter's boyfriend sharing a body with a hell demon that unleashes fire and chaos onto partygoers, but the sluggish nature of Lisa's parents to actually get a move on leaves a lot of room for improvement. Finally, we have reached the end of the gray area. We've entered the dark side. These characters are the bad and the evil. First up on our scale of bad is Jesse's father, Ken Walsh. We get that what he's going for is sort of a tough love approach to parenting, but it's clearly not working. When Jesse's brought home by the police officers, he decides it's drugs so that he has something to grasp onto. He ends up forsaking the sanity and nearly life of his son to paint a picture for himself that's easy to understand. He is too prideful, stubborn, and generally ignorant to consider a good parent, or even a good man.
What that boy needs is a good goddamn kick in the butt. That's what he needs.
He doesn't let Jesse's mother call to fix the air conditioner because he believes he can fix it himself, despite his family's implication that he often makes such problems worse. He blames Jesse for blowing up the pet birds despite utter lack of evidence. He seems horrified at his wife's suggestion that they try to get some help for Jesse as a result of his nightmares. All in all, we don't believe he means to be actively harmful, but he often is. Someone who often does mean harm, however, is our next pick, Coach Schneider. At least we think he does. Honestly, it's a little hard to tell what this guy wants. He's made out to be the big jerk of a coach, but the first few times we see him punishing students, he really just seems to be doing his job. Grady says that he gets his rocks off punishing kids, and that he hangs out in shady clubs downtown.
He likes pretty boys like you.
Normally, we're inclined to believe the exact opposite of whatever Grady says, and for a little bit, it seemed like maybe Schneider was going to end up being surprisingly empathetic. He isn't though. What pushes him so low on the list is not the fact that Jesse does eventually find him in one of the aforementioned clubs, It's how he responds to being discovered there. He finds an underage boy hanging out in a bar, drinking a beer, and he seems almost excited to be caught. Satisfied, at the very least. And what does he do when he finds a student at a bar? You would think the answer would be to report him or to take him back to his parents or even just to pull him aside and say, "Are you okay?" But no. He brings him back to the school to make him run laps for some reason. Yeah, sure, there's worse punishments. But the whole scene has some very sinister undertones regarding Schneider's motivations here that leads us to believe that maybe Grady wasn't entirely full of shit for a change. It's only implied that Schneider enjoys the power dynamic with the students a little too much, but that's really just not okay. He takes a vulnerable student to a second location all alone to administer a punishment, and the whole thing's just really sketchy. Taking our bronze medal of evil home is none other than Jesse himself. And strangely enough, it is not the killing that pushes him so low. We'll talk about this a little more when we break down everyone's score on our evil board, but the fact that he has a separate consciousness, and usually a separate physical form as well, from Freddy makes it abundantly clear that he's not in the driver's seat for any of the kills in this movie.
Kill me, Lisa. Please kill me.
In fact, one of Jesse's best qualities is how hard he tries to fight Freddy, using his body as a gateway to harm others. What earns him the bronze medal is how he goes about trying to stop Freddy. He knows that Freddy can only kill using Jesse's body, and how or why is never properly explained, so we don't blame him for having some doubts or questions, but he spends a lot of time just going about his life as normal, even after he knows he killed Coach Schneider and nearly killed his sister as well. At first, his reluctance to turn himself in is understandable. He thinks he's only a danger while he's sleeping. During Lisa's party, however, when things start to get a little hot and heavy, he learns that Freddy can start making himself known through Jesse at any time. Jesse panics and won't explain to Lisa what's going wrong or let her help, even though it's clear and she's done more research on Krueger and has a better grasp of how things work. She supports him unconditionally and literally begs him to let her know what's going on. Not only does he not do that, but then he demands help from Grady, someone who has no insight into the situation and obviously doesn't believe the story. This is what ultimately leads to Grady's death. When Jesse sees that he has yet more blood on his hands, this still isn't his breaking point. Instead of letting the police take him or trying to isolate him somewhere he can't hurt anybody, he decides to once again get Lisa involved in the vaguest way possible. This also puts him / Freddy in easy access to a lot of victims, which turns out to be very bad for everyone. We see him struggling enough throughout the movie that we're inclined to give him the benefit of the doubt as far as intentions go. When we boil it down to actions though, his repeated failure to make good decisions while also covering up murders doesn't leave the best impression. Still though, there is worse yet to come on our list. Speaking of which, our silver medal of evil goes to the partygoers. We docked points from Mr. and Mrs. Weber for not helping the children who are in crisis, but looking at those children, maybe they didn't deserve to be helped. After all, they are all Freddy's children now.
You are all my children now.
They watched Lisa 1v1 Freddy for a long time with slack jaws and detached interest like this was nothing more consequential than a wrestling match. They didn't do anything to help her or themselves. And then they went into a full-on stampede mode the second Freddy made it outside. All aside from the one well-meaning partier who foolishly tries to talk to Freddy, the partygoers clearly only care about themselves.
Nobody's gonna hurt you.
If you have any doubts about this, keep in mind that they have blood on their hands, or feet, rather. They literally trample one of their own to death in an attempt to escape. It's like frickin' Black Friday. And finally, our gold medal of evil goes to Freddy Krueger. He's a little harder to understand in this movie, but that doesn't stop him from being a sadistic killer. In fact, after 3 or 4 deaths, depending on how you want to count them, it seems that nothing is going to stop the torture and the killing.
Daddy can't help you now.
Not only does he still have that criminal record of the children's murders looming over him, as well as the deaths from the first movie, he seems delighted to be causing all the torment. He's even torturing Jesse with psychological torment and some gruesome and painful body horror. And he's supposed to be making friends. Some slashers seem to lose their steam as their sequels unroll, but if this movie is any indication, Freddy just seems to be getting scarier and more violent by the minute. And finally, we are on to our evil board. As usual, we are ranking our killers on a scale of 1 to 100, with 100 being the highest evil score possible. We score them in 10 categories, each on a scale of 1 to 10, then tally them all together. Remember, more points equals more evil. First up, kill count. Freddy's kill count was already up to 24 from the previous movie, plus the 9-ish deaths he's responsible for in this film. That comes out to a total of 33 victims, which brings his score up to an 8 out of 10 according to our chart. Next up, does the killer have the capacity to love somebody? Anybody? Not that we've seen, so Freddy is going to take the full 10 out of 10. Was the killer wronged in some way? Again, we're going to say that he gets a 5 out of 10. While we don't condone the vigilante justice that got Freddy burned alive, or deny that murder by mob counts as being wronged, the death count of 20 children before the boiler room incident is enough to consider that he was a murderer well before he was wronged. Now, how much pleasure or joy does the killer get from his actions? Too much! Freddy is going to get another 10 out of 10 for how much he's enjoying himself, because he makes it all too clear that he loves what he's doing. Does the killer need to kill to survive? We're going to score Freddy at a 7 here. We're knocking a few points off because Freddy only seems to thrive when he has teenagers to kill, and the more chaos he inflicts, the more powerful he seems to get. That being said, he lay dormant for 5 years and is still powerful enough to merge bodies with someone fighting him, so he is not in imminent danger of going away anytime soon. Does the killer have some warped moral code or believe they're killing for the greater good? If anything, I'd say he prefers being evil and not having a moral code. Is the killer especially cruel in how they kill or torture? Yes, between the sleep deprivation, the nightmare realm, and the personal nature of each kill, Freddy's deaths are some of the cruelest in the world of slashers. Does the killer show mercy? No, the killer shows no signs of mercy. Does the killer have any diminished mental capacity? He does not seem to have any diminished mental capacity. In fact, we'd describe him as the brains of the operation here. Is the killer a demon, satanic, or otherwise an extension of the devil or hell? Freddy gets another 8 out of 10 here. He's not the devil, but he's clearly a demon of some sort, and a pretty evil one at that. And finally, our formula requires us to divide their score by 50% if a killer was being controlled by some known supernatural or otherwise mind-controlling entity. This is not accurate to Freddy. It would be accurate to Jesse if we were giving him credit for the kills committed through his body, but we're not. So the final score on our evil board comes out to Freddy Krueger with a total evil score of 88 out of 100. This is actually 2 points more evil than his previous score of 86, largely because of the spike in kills and his continual creepiness. With that out of the way, let's award some medals. The gold, silver, and bronze medals of good go to Lisa, Carrie, and Mrs. Walsh respectively. Our medal for most righteous kill has to go to Lisa for vanquishing Freddy Krueger in order to save her boyfriend with the power of her love, which sounds a little corny, but it's actually what happened. Our greatest sacrifice medal actually goes to the one pure and unnamed partygoer. In the midst of full mob mentality, he stands up to try and give therapy to Krueger in one of the stupidest and most selfless acts ever seen on screen. As far as our sinner medals go, the gold, silver, and bronze medals of evil go to Freddy, the partygoers, and Jesse respectively. The cruelest kill has to go to Freddy for how he kills Coach Schneider. He is strung up naked, whipped, and then slashed apart fatally over one of the longest running on-screen deaths from the bunch. The worst betrayal medal definitely goes to Grady for, you know it, going to sleep. He barely has time to drift off before he's killed. But he shouldn't have promised to stay awake if he didn't mean to do it.
Sweet dreams, pal.
There's always that one person. The Darwin Medal also goes to our unnamed but selflessly idiotic partygoer. Because even if you are trying to save a mob, who tries to talk it out with a murderous demon for a group that clearly isn't smart enough to use the time you're buying them? And finally, our 7 deadly sin medals. The lust medal goes to Schneider for whatever weird power play fantasies he's not quite acting out, but being not subtle about. We don't know and we don't want to know. We'll just hand out the medal and call it a day. He's also going to take the Wrath medal for his general bad temper and overreactions. The Envy medal goes to Freddy, as does the Greed medal. One life just isn't enough for him to do all his killing in. And the way that he takes over Jesse's form shows that he has some obvious life envy going on, in addition to whatever psychotic conditions bring him back from the dead.
We need you, Jesse.
The Gluttony medal goes to Grady for, well, quite literally being gluttonous. Have you seen how this kid eats? The Sloth medal goes to Jesse. While no one in the movie is exactly quick acting, it's something that we see exhibited through Jesse during all levels of stress. He is a procrastinator of chores and, as we've seen, one of the last people you want around in an emergency. And finally, we are presenting the Pride medal to Mr. Walsh. We spoke already about how prideful of a man he is, but this is a good time to remind everyone that if you believe your son is going crazy due to overheating in your house and you still won't call someone out to look at it because you think you're such a handyman, you might have a problem. And that's it, everybody. The characters of Freddy's Revenge ranked from most good to most evil. Don't forget to let us know who you think should have won our Saints and Sinners medals down in the comments below, as well as tip us off to which scary movies you'd like to see us tackle in the future. We'll be covering some more Elm Street soon, so stay tuned. Do us a huge favor and like this video, as well as hit that notification bell so you know whenever we upload a new video to Blood Binge, where we satisfy your thirst for all things horror. Thanks for watching!